After 6 weeks, Moon Knight has come to an end. While I had a fun time milking the show for views, I gotta move on to bigger and better things, mainly Obi-Wan. All jokes aside, since the finale came out, I've been really excited to talk about my opinions on the show. From the good, the bad, and the ugly, mainly CGI, did Moon Knight live up to my expectations? Not really, but spoilers incoming. I want to talk about the positives first. I think the way they handled Mark's dissociative identity disorder was pretty well done for the most part. The team that handled Moon Knight said they wanted to accurately portray how the illness would affect someone, and I think they did a really good job. Mark using Steven as a way to cope with trauma is what people who actually have DID do. I think they handled it with care and respect, which is something I have to commend them for. Another thing I really liked was the acting. The three leads were amazing. Ethan Hawke was super menacing yet friendly at the same time. He was weird in a good way. He's really kind to all of his henchmen, which that was kind of funny. He actually cared about people, even the ones that he killed, which is super unique for a villain of his type. Evil bad guys killing people before they've committed crime, thus making the bad guy think that they're a good guy. His reasoning for doing this is also something I really liked. In the comics, up until recently, we only knew one fist of Khonshu, that being Mark, so it's really interesting to see another pawn of Khonshu be horrified at what he's done and try to repent for it. May Calamawy is also really good in the series. She played a completely new character named Layla that I really liked. Layla replaced Marlene in the show, and I kinda wish they did that in the comics. Marlene literally got written out of the comics in between issues. It'd be so easy to do. Marlene never really had much to do other than be Moon Knight's love interest, but Layla has much more agency and is much more of an actual character. But the actor who gave one of the best performances in the MCU was Oscar Isaac. The way he's able to juggle between two different characters is so cool. Both Mark and Steven have their own little quirks and different body mannerisms that I love. There's a scene where he transitions between the two, and it's just so natural how he's able to do all of that and include different accents.
Alright, go ahead, you're in. Cheers, thanks a lot. Alright. Yeah.
You can feel how Mark starts off full of rage and kind of broken, but at the end you can feel how he's starting to feel whole again. Steven is just so charismatic, it's impossible not to root for him. Speaking of Mark and Steven, I really liked their Moon Knight and Mr. Knight costumes. Mr. Knight is pretty similar to the comics, except it's like a cream color and it has a stitch on the mask, which I kind of like for the MCU. I wouldn't want it in the comics, but I like that it's here. Moon Knight suit is very different, but I like it. It takes inspiration from Earth X Moon Knight, and it goes for a mummy approach, which makes sense. Khonshu revived him, thus he's kind of like a mummy, and it fits the Egyptian aesthetic. I don't really like the crescent on his forehead, though. Speaking of the Egyptian aesthetic, that's front and center with the show, and it's never been done before in the comics, so it's a nice change of pace. Also, the music goes really hard for some reason. Like, listen to Moon Knight's theme. However, I'm not in love with everything they did, one of them being how they handled Mark's religion. In the comics, Mark is Jewish. Now, if you don't read the comics, you may be like, so he believes in God, but he works for an Egyptian god? That doesn't really make sense. That's kind of the point. Even his therapist calls him out on it. But it's one of the reasons why it's important to the character. The character flaw that Mark works for Khonshu, even though he's Jewish, because his father would have died before recognizing another god. Meanwhile, Mark accepted Khonshu's offer and betrayed his god to fuel his thirst for violence. Better explained in issue 5 of the 2021 Moon Knight run, so if you want to understand it better, I'd read that. But in the show, Mark being Jewish is basically an Easter egg. Shown on screen one time right here, and then it's never mentioned again. I wish they showed us more of it. Something else that I wish they showed us more was Khonshu. Seems kind of like an afterthought at times, even though he started the main plot. I just would have liked to see more of him. I think one of the biggest problems, however, is the pacing. Like most of the Disney Plus Marvel shows, Moon Knight has only 6 episodes to tell its story, which leads to pacing problems. First 2 episodes are spent focusing on Steven, which means the first third of the show is spent on introducing us to Steven, which normally would be good, but with so much ground to cover, the show has to play catch-up in order to tell its story, which leads to the finale being a bit rushed due to having to tie all the plots together in a satisfying way, which it falls a bit flat on. While I was writing the script, an article came out saying that a scene was cut where Mark talked to his mom and was apparently Oscar-worthy. That just shows that Disney should change the format of the Disney Plus shows. They don't have to cut corners on what could have been great character moments. Another aspect of the show that I don't like is the way they handled Mr. Knight. In the comics, Mr. Knight is created after Mark learns to be a better hero and no longer a crazy lunatic who cuts people's faces off. It's a character-defining event that's stuck with him ever since. When Steven wants to become Moon Knight, he instead turns into Mr. Knight, which I really don't like because Mr. Knight should be earned, if that makes sense. I wish they used maybe the comic suit for Steven, showing that he still doesn't get what it means to be Moon Knight without misusing one of the most interesting parts of the character. Also, it's kind of weird that they both get their own weapons the other can't use. Moon Knight gets the crescent darts, and Mr. Knight gets the truncheon. Though I guess the workaround is you just swap really fast, which I guess works. The final thing I didn't like was the style of the story. When the show was announced, I was hoping we'd get a character study rather than just an action show. While some parts dive deep into the psyche of Mark Spector, I wish the entire show was like this. Episode 5 was easily my favorite because it had only one very small action scene, and the rest was spent on fleshing out Mark and Steven, which I thought was great. The rest of the show is more standard adventure, which is a little disappointing. There's so much potential with the character and where he can go, and I hope Marvel realizes this and give Moon Knight a time to shine. So overall, 7 out of 10. See you guys next time.